Revenge Films.
My name is Michael Smith. I met my wife Karen through a mutual friend, and 1 year later, we got married. I was now a husband, but I was still a son to my father. I did grow up with a mother, but 5 years ago, unfortunately, she passed away due to an illness. Ever since then, my father has been living alone in my hometown at the family house. Originally, I had moved to my current state for a short-term business assignment. However, after I met my wife, I asked my company if I could stay here. They arranged for me to be able to continue working at the local office. Where we were currently living was my wife's hometown, so her parents were also living close by, not even 30 minutes away. I thought we had a pretty good, friendly relationship with them. On the other hand, my hometown was about 3 hours away by car. On top of that, my wife said that whenever we would go to my father's place, she would have to be thoughtful of him and it would exhaust her. For these reasons, I hadn't been able to see him in a while. As for my wife's parents, I made sure to get them birthday presents every year, and from time to time we would go on day trip vacations together as well. However, since I haven't been able to do anything for my own father, I decided that on the upcoming Father's Day, I could go on a vacation with him alone for the first time in a long time. If I was being honest, I wanted my wife to come with me as well, but on a regular basis she was saying that she didn't like being around my father because it would make her have to be extra careful. I assumed that she wouldn't want to come anyway, so I planned the vacation to go alone with my father. And of course, I wanted to make sure I did Father's Day properly for my father-in-law as well. I remembered him saying before that he wanted a new golf set, so I was planning on buying that for him. And then on the day of Father's Day, in the morning, I stopped by my wife's parents' house to say hello, and I gifted him the brand new golf set. When I did, he seemed thrilled, and then I turned to my wife and told her just after noon that day that I would be going on a one-night trip with my father to celebrate Father's Day with him. Just as I expected, my wife said that she didn't want to come with us, and I told her that I had already imagined that would be the case. I told her she didn't need to worry about it, and so I prepared for my trip, and the next morning I set off to see my father. And then, after picking up my father in the car, we looked at the autumn leaves and went around to different temples. We did a lot of sightseeing together, and I apologized to him that I haven't been able to go and see him frequently. But when I apologized, it seemed like my father understood everything without me having to say anything. And he said, "The most important thing is for you to get along well with your wife. I want you to be happy, so you should treasure her parents as well." When he said that to me, it made me feel like crying. It really had been a long time since I spent this much quality time with my father or to go on a vacation together, and I had a lot of fun. That is, however, until we arrived at the hotel that I had reserved for us to stay in. To my shock, when I arrived, my wife was waiting there with her parents. As soon as they saw us, my wife came storming over to me, and all of a sudden she started yelling at me.
Excuse me, Michael, I never heard that you were going to be staying at such a luxury hotel. Why didn't you tell me?
Karen, what are you doing here?
I saw your email on your computer at home, and I saw the confirmation email from this hotel. That's why I'm here. So anyway, my parents are going to be staying at this hotel tonight, so I need you to make your father go back home.
What are you saying? But I gave your father a Father's Day present already, didn't I? This vacation is for me and my father as a gift to him.
Huh? It's a given that my parents should be the priority, obviously. But also, this place doesn't suit your father anyway, does it? A hotel like this? He doesn't belong here.
This hotel is actually owned and operated by my father's family, though.
What?
My wife's jaw dropped to the floor, and then she turned to the hotel and looked it up and down. But of course she was shocked. This hotel was widely recognized as the best, if not competing for second best hotel in the state. It was a high-end luxury hotel. There was plenty of highly trained hotel staff, and even the guests that would stay at this hotel were of a high level. My wife said that she had no idea that my father's family had such a hotel, and her eyes were swimming everywhere. She kept asking me if I was joking or lying, but obviously there's no way that I would lie about something like that. My father had been born as the second son to my grandma and grandpa, and so the eldest son, my uncle who was still single, was running the hotel alongside my grandfather. Generally, my father says that he's not cut out to be running a business, but I knew that my father and my uncle and my grandfather were all similarly intelligent. Growing up, I remember my uncle would often come over to our house to ask my father for his opinion about the business. Now that they knew that this hotel was owned by my relatives behind my wife, I could see that my mother-in-law and father-in-law had sparkles in their eyes. I'm sure they thought they had grasped the tale of a super wealthy man and were getting excited by the prospect. As this was happening, it was almost time for check-in. My uncle must have known that we would be arriving soon, and he came out of the hotel and found us. He seemed happy to see my father and I and came running over to us. "Thank you for coming. We're so glad that you made it. We've prepared the best room in the house for you." As he said that to my father and I could see my wife out of the corner of my eye as she shuffled over in our direction. I immediately got in between, and I asked my uncle to take my father up to the room first. My uncle had never seen my wife before, so he didn't think twice about it, and just as I requested, went up on the escalator with my father. But then, instantly, my wife transformed from her attitude earlier.
Why didn't you tell me something that was this important? I'm so glad I married you, Michael, truly.
She said with a smile on her face, and then my father-in-law continued. "That's exactly right, and look at this, we've already come all the way here. Since we're here, I was thinking I may as well have a drink with your father and cheers together. We are your in-laws, your wife's parents, so I'm sure you'll prepare a good room for us, right?" When he said that to me, I couldn't help but laugh. I replied that there was no way I would be able to stay there with people who belittled my father and looked down on him. But then he replied, "Oh, come on, what are you saying? That was just a little joke earlier." He tried to laugh it off, and my mother-in-law smiled and nodded next to him in agreement. Until just a few moments ago, they were looking down on my father, and they were only thinking about themselves. And yet now, after all of that, what were they saying? My father told me to value my relationship with my wife and treasure her parents, but it would be a joke for me to remain a husband to a woman like this, and that included my in-laws, who were only looking at the money. It was true that my grandfather was already quite old, and in reality, my uncle had asked my father multiple times if he would help out with running the hotel. However, all of that still belonged to my grandparents and my uncle, or perhaps even my father. But even if my uncle were to say that in the future he wanted to donate all of the family assets, I would agree to that, because it wasn't my money after all. However, it seems that my wife and her parents were already looking at this hotel as if it belongs to them, and it made me want to throw up. Now that she had learned that I was the grandson of a wealthy family, my wife called out to the hotel staff and started demanding that they prepare the suite for her. But then I called hotel security, and I had her and her parents kicked out of the hotel. Of course, I asked them to never let them into the hotel ever again, and that if they were to try to force their way in, that the hotel was welcome to call the police. My wife and her parents were kicking and screaming and complaining to the security guards, but after a while, they left. From there, I finally returned to my hotel room and I reunited with my father and uncle as though nothing had happened. I continued the vacation and enjoyed my time with my father. In reality, the plan was to only stay for one night, but I knew there was no point in going back to that house. So, I got approval from my uncle to stay another night, and I fully enjoyed the vacation. My father seemed sorry that because of him my relationship with my wife was ruined, but as for me, I thought that he saved me because I was able to know my wife's true nature. After that, I went back home. But when I arrived there, it wasn't just my wife that welcomed me back, but also my in-laws.
Hey, honey, given the opportunity, let's build a two-family connected house, you know, a huge mansion for about $3 million.
Yeah, good idea. Let's make the bathtub out of hinoki wood.
And I want some rare jewels.
They started saying whatever they wanted, but without saying a word, I placed a particular green paper in front of them. And then all of their eyes opened wide and they were shocked, asking me, "What is this?" But I told them it was exactly what it looks like: divorce papers. My wife burst into a tantrum and started crying. "But why are we getting a divorce?" I couldn't believe that I had to explain that for them to understand, so I said, "There's no way I can continue living as a family with people like you who are so dirty and pathetic with money." And that was all I said. But then, with bad acting, my wife started crying, saying she doesn't want to get a divorce and that I'm the only man that she loves. But it was so crystal clear that she only had her eyes on the money. Up until this incident, I had treasured my wife and her parents and treated them well, even to the point where I felt sorry to my own father. And yet, on that day, my wife was demanding that I prioritize her parents over my own father, and on top of that, to make him leave. And as the cherry on top, when they found out that I was the family of the owners of a luxury hotel, they already started talking about building a house for them without even discussing it with me. There was no way I would want to stay with garbage people like them. My wife said that she didn't want to divorce me, the grandson of a wealthy family, no matter what. But I had already expected that. A few days later, with the help of a lawyer, I swiftly got divorced from her. During the divorce, my ex-wife was rambling that I better hand over a separation of assets, but my grandparents were still healthy and alive, and at the end of the day, I was just an average salaryman, so I didn't have any assets. And first of all, even if I did have money from my bonus, it was all being used on her and her parents, so what was she saying? As for the apartment we were living in, I also immediately terminated the contract. That meant my ex-wife lost a place to live, and it turned out that as soon as she thought that I was wealthy, she was bragging a lot to those around her and using the credit card to her heart's desire. But that all came raining back onto her, and combined with what was spent on her parents, I heard they ended up having to carry more than $50,000 in debt. As a result, neither her parents nor my ex-wife were able to pay it, and they ended up blacklisted from the bank. Furthermore, their family house was seized, and the three of them were basically living a homeless lifestyle while paying back that debt. After that, my uncle approached me and asked if I wanted to help out with the family hotel. My father and I decided to do that together. To this day, I get messages from those three begging for my help, but I don't plan on helping them for the rest of my life. I hope they live with regret for their own actions.
Originally, it was just me and my husband living together, but after my father-in-law passed away, my mother-in-law insisted non-stop that she couldn't live alone and needed to move in with us. We didn't have much of a choice, so we agreed to let her live with us. That's when I started seeing her worst habits up close. Turns out my mother-in-law is incredibly talented at letting food in the fridge go bad and absolutely terrible at keeping it organized. She'll keep buying things we already have, stuffing the new items in front and pushing the old ones to the back. Before we know it, meat turns into some horrifying color and vegetables melt into mush and leak everywhere. I'm not a clean freak or anything, but I always kept the fridge organized and tried to avoid buying duplicates. I even used to write what we had on a whiteboard before she moved in. But after she arrived, the fridge quickly became a disaster zone. Even my husband, who's usually patient, lost his temper. After a huge blow-up, she reluctantly started tidying the fridge a little, but that's when a new problem started. She began trying to feed me spoiled food. Sometimes she'd warn me, like, "This is a bit off, so why don't you eat it?" Other times, she'd just serve it without a word. But it was obvious because she never ate it herself, even if I offered to share. She only gave it to me. She might be a pro at turning the fridge into a biohazard, but she's extra careful not to eat anything questionable herself. I'm not stupid either, so when she tried to give me something sketchy, I just ignored it. Then one day, she served me something that clearly reeked. The smell alone screamed food poisoning. I told her, "This is already spoiled, so I can't eat this." She turned bright red and yelled, "How dare you, as my daughter-in-law, refuse something I kindly offered you?" But no matter how much she yelled, eating that would have been insane. It was absolutely hospital-level bad, so I said, "Well, then why don't you eat it?" She replied, "I'm full, I don't want it. That's why you should eat it." That's when I realized that she knew it was bad. At that point, I didn't even feel like dealing with her anymore. I just left the kitchen. As I walked away, I heard her muttering to herself and angrily tossing it into the trash. I realized that if this kept going, I'd end up living in a constant paranoia every time I ate. No way was I going to let that happen, so I decided it was time to teach my mother-in-law a little lesson. One day, just like always, she made a meal for herself and was about to sit down for lunch alone. That's when I brought out some pickles and placed them on the table for her. "These are really good. You love pickles, don't you? Please help yourself. Eat as much as you'd like," I said sweetly. At first, she looked pleasantly surprised. "Oh, are you sure?" she asked, smiling. But as she noticed I didn't touch them at all, not even a single bite, then her expression began to change. Suspicion started creeping in. "You're not going to eat any?" "I wanted you to have them," I replied with a polite smile. She stared at me, face turning red, eyes glaring. Yep, this was exactly the trick she always pulled, offering spoiled food without warning and pretending it was fine. So this time I flipped the script on her, gave her a taste of her own medicine. In the end, she didn't touch the pickles, but at dinner I brought out the same pickles and served them to my husband instead. The moment she saw that, her eyes widened. She must have realized they were the same ones from earlier. She panicked, rushed over, and out of breath snatched them away, yelling, "No, don't eat those! They're spoiled!" Funny, isn't it? She has no problem trying to feed me rotten food, but her precious son? Absolutely not. But my husband was confused and annoyed.
Why would we have spoiled food in the house? I like those pickles. Give them back.
He tried to take them from her, but she suddenly looked like she'd just won a battle. "Aha! You have the packaging for these, don't you? Go get it right now! That'll prove it!" She really thought she had me cornered, so I went to the trash, calmly pulled out the bag, and handed it to her. Of course, the pickles weren't expired at all. They were from a famous, long-established pickle shop in Kyoto. Totally fine. When she saw the packaging, her face turned completely pale. Flustered, she started blurting out nonsense. Wait, no, this is fake!" Fake? As if a regular person could forge food packaging. Get real. Panicking, she rushed over to dig through the trash herself, but when she couldn't find anything, she snapped. "Where did you hide it? You didn't open this today, did you?" "I did open it today," I replied calmly. "Well then, if you're so confident, why don't you eat it?" Clearly her plan was based on the assumption that the pickles were spoiled and that I wouldn't dare eat them. She looked at me smugly, convinced she had me cornered. My husband was just about to explode at her for her attitude, but I gently stopped him and calmly took a bite of the pickles myself. I said to her they taste really good, smiling as I chewed. Then I offered some to my husband, and he happily dug in too, saying how delicious they were. Seeing that, my mother-in-law looked absolutely bewildered, and she was like, "What's going on?" My husband, clearly fed up, snapped, "That's what I want to know." And that's when I laid it all out. I told him everything she'd been doing, how she'd regularly tried to feed me spoiled food, and how she probably assumed I was doing the same thing to her now as revenge. But through tears, I said, I'd never do something like that. I'm not like her. My husband's face turned red with fury.
Have you lost your mind? Trying to make someone eat spoiled food? Do you realize how dangerous that is? She could have gotten food poisoning or worse.
My mother-in-law, shaking now, tried to defend herself and said, This isn't what I meant to happen. But he cut her off.
That's enough. I'm done. I'm not letting my wife live with someone who's willing to harm her. We're ending this co-living arrangement. From now on, you can live on your own.
Her face turned ghostly pale and she even started crying. But inside, I was doing a fist pump. Victory. Things moved quickly after that. My husband, realizing she'd never leave on her own if we gave her the chance, acted fast. Within a few days, he found a tiny, run-down apartment that she could afford with her pension. While she sobbed and begged, saying, I'm sorry, I'll never do it again, he ignored her completely and moved her belongings into the apartment without a second thought. Then, standing her up on her feet as she cried, he said firmly,
Crying won't change anything. After everything Hannah did for you, letting you live with us, you fed her spoiled food. I never imagined it wasn't just the fridge that was rotten, but your heart, too.
With that, he dropped her off and walked away, cutting ties for good. Originally, it was my mother-in-law who asked to live with us, and we reluctantly agreed. I guess she really just loves her son so much that she saw me as an obstacle. In fact, living with her son also means living with me, so I guess she figured she'd bully me out of the picture? I never actually fell victim to her spoiled food attacks because I completely ignored them and refused to eat anything suspicious. But maybe she thought that if she just kept at it, I'd eventually get sick and end up hospitalized, or even get so fed up that I'd divorce him. I doubt she ever considered the possibility that my husband would take my side. Looking back, it's clear she was living in some kind of delusional fantasy world. Of course, if my husband hadn't stood by me, I would have divorced him without a second thought. But he made it clear just how much he values me, and I'm really thankful for that. After my husband moved her into that dingy apartment he signed for without her consent, she actually had the nerve to call me. Crying, she begged, Please let me come live with you again. I promise I'll never try to feed you spoiled food again. Yeah, hard pass. I shut that down immediately. After everything she put me through, who in their right mind would welcome her back with open arms and a smile? Oh, please. Up until now, it was her husband, the one voice of reason who kept her fridge madness in check. But now that he's gone, no one's around to stop her. I'm sure her fridge is going to be overflowing with rotten garbage in no time. She might have been hoping to poison me with spoiled food, but honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if she ends up doing herself in instead. But hey, if that happens, it's her own fault. I won't be shedding any tears.
I met my wife through a mutual friend. I'd never had a girlfriend before, so when I started dating this beautiful woman, I was honestly over the moon. I didn't want to lose her to someone else, so I tried really hard to impress her. I mean really hard. I carefully planned every date, did my research, and took her to fancy restaurants almost every time. It wasn't cheap, but I had a solid job at a large company with a good salary and generous bonuses, so I could afford it without too much strain. About a year into our relationship, I proposed. I picked out a trendy engagement ring at the time and popped the question at an upscale restaurant. She said yes and looked genuinely happy. But once we got married, things turned out very differently than I'd imagined. It quickly became clear that she wasn't actually all that interested in me. She became a housewife, which I was totally fine with. That was what she'd always wanted. But her attitude was off. She'd say things like,
Should I cook dinner for you today? I guess I can do your laundry if I have to.
She always acts like she was doing me a huge favor. It started to wear on me. There were days when there was no dinner or the apartment was a mess. Whether the chores got done totally depended on her mood. I'd sometimes ask her to cook for me in the morning, and only if I hyped her up enough, showered her with praise, would she actually do it. I get it. No one wants to do chores 365 days a year. I lived alone for years, so I know how tiring it is. A day off here and there is normal, but needing to beg for basic help every day, that was exhausting. Then one morning, out of nowhere, she cut my allowance. I was already only getting about $100, which felt pretty low considering I was bringing home over $3,000 monthly. But she cut it down to just $35. I protested. After all, that money included my lunch expenses. She said she'll prepare my lunch from now on. I figured she meant she'd start packing me bento boxes to save money. But the next day, she handed me a single discounted sandwich from the day before and a giant water bottle filled with plain water. I was honestly shocked. Still, I couldn't bring myself to push back. I was in love with her, and part of me was just grateful that she chose to marry someone like me. She was good to my parents, and that counted for something. So I kept my mouth shut, even though I was really struggling inside. Then one day, out of nowhere, my wife confessed that she'd been cheating on me. I literally blurted out, "What?" But she showed zero remorse. In fact, she was completely unapologetic and said things like, "He's more attractive than you, he makes more money, and this is your fault for being such a low-level man." In fact, she didn't even try to soften the blow, just said it straight to my face. What shocked me even more was that she didn't intend to divorce me. She seemed confident that I wouldn't leave her. And honestly, I could see why. I had always been obedient, deeply in love with her, and never stood up to her. She probably thought I was too afraid or too dependent to walk away. The truth is, she just wanted to keep me around as her personal ATM while she had fun with a high-spec guy on the side. To be fair, in the beginning, I was genuinely in love. I have no doubt I loved her way more than she ever loved me, if she even did at all. Honestly, I'm not sure she ever cared about me. Looking back now, I kind of laugh at myself. But the moment she admitted to the affair, every last bit of love I had for her vanished. And right then, she had the audacity to say, "If you don't want me to leave, you'd better treat me even better than before." She went on and on bragging about the other guy, completely oblivious to how messed up it was. And while she was saying all this, I was recording everything. You see, my wife had always kept up a perfect image in front of others. My parents, her parents, our friends, so everyone thought she was the perfect wife. That's why I knew no one would believe me without proof. So I recorded everything, and once I had enough, I consulted a lawyer and got fully prepared. Then I went to see my parents. I played the recordings and showed them the evidence. They were shocked. But my mom, who absolutely hates anything to do with cheating, immediately said,
"You need to divorce her right away. That woman is trash."
She was furious. She told me that, as a fellow woman, she had always sensed that something was off about my wife, that there was something fake hiding underneath her nice act. Next, I went to my wife's parents, this time with my lawyer present. My wife was there too, and in front of her parents, she put on a show, quietly crying like she was the victim. To make matters worse, she had twisted the entire story and made it sound like I was the one who betrayed her. Her father, completely convinced by her tears, called me a piece of garbage. Her mother joined in, demanding that I pay alimony. Honestly, her performance was impressive. I couldn't even blame them for believing her. She was that convincing. But then I calmly pulled out the evidence. I showed them the documents and recordings I had gathered. Even then, they refused to believe it. So I asked, "You trust your daughter's words, right?" Of course we do. Why wouldn't we trust our own daughter over you? Good. Then please listen carefully to exactly what she said. And with that, I hit play full volume on the voice recording from the day she confessed everything. There was no denying it. The voice of the daughter they trusted so blindly, openly bragging about her affair. Their faces turned pale. Her father couldn't even look at me. He was too ashamed after how confidently he'd called me a liar. Meanwhile, my wife turned to me, her face twisted with rage, and shrieked,
When did you even record this?
Then she lunged at me, scratching my face in front of everyone. She even slapped my lawyer across the head. We were all stunned. Her parents scrambled to stop her while my lawyer, visibly shaken, calmly pulled out his phone and called the police. Even then, she kept lashing out. Eventually, the police arrived and she was arrested on the spot for obstructing law enforcement. The whole time, she hurled insult after insult at both me and my lawyer. Because of that behavior, we ended up raising the amount of emotional damages in the lawsuit. Honestly, my lawyer was furious and told me, we're going all the way with this. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. That day ended with her being taken away in cuffs. Later, her parents contacted me again and sincerely apologized. Her father even got on his knees and said, We'll make sure she pays full compensation. I'm so sorry for trusting her and dismissing your words. Her mother, who had earlier demanded that I pay, looked terrified, like she was scared I'd sue them too. She bowed deeply, practically pressing her forehead to the floor, begging for forgiveness. My wife had never appreciated me, not even once. But in that moment, her parents finally saw the truth, and it honestly felt like a small bit of justice. As for the guy she cheated with, I sent a formal legal notice directly to his workplace. Everything came out, word spread fast, and he ended up getting fired. But the best part, just like my wife had bragged, he was a high earner, which meant he had savings. So when we demanded compensation, he paid up, and it was a very generous amount. After everything blew up, my wife was completely abandoned by her parents. They cut ties with her once they realized she had lied to and manipulated them too. As for the guy she cheated with, he dumped her as well, leaving her buried in debt. Desperate and alone, she started reaching out to me, begging for forgiveness. She sent message after message saying things like, I only ever loved you. That other guy, I only used him to test how deep my love for you really was. It was pathetic. She probably thought that, since I had once been completely infatuated with her, she still had a chance. Maybe she could pull me back in. But I didn't even consider it. I ignored every message. I had nothing left to give her. Not time, not sympathy. Eventually, she had no choice but to start working part-time jobs just to survive and pay the compensation. But she'd never worked a day in her life before. She'd always been a full-time housewife. Now she had to cover both her living expenses and the damages she owed, so she ended up working 3 jobs at once. Even with that, it wasn't enough. From what I've heard, she now lives in a run-down apartment, scraping by on expired bread and discount groceries. She went from living a luxurious life during our marriage, high-end restaurants, expensive clothes, spa treatments, designer cosmetics, to complete poverty. And it's only going to get worse. She'll be stuck like that for the next 10 years at least. By then, she'll be older, and finding a new man won't be so easy. No more facials, no more expensive makeup products, no more shopping sprees. Her glamorous life is over. Her future is basically ruined. And honestly, she brought it all on herself. I don't feel even a shred of guilt. She got exactly what she deserved. I'm Joey, married to my wife Pauline, who works at the same company. I'm in sales and she was in PR, but we ran into each other in the break room and at occasional company parties. At that time, she was having trouble with her boyfriend who worked for our client company. I didn't know the guy, but according to Pauline, he sounded like a jerk.
He cheated on me. I kept asking about it and he admitted it. And he said he wants to split. Cheating is the worst thing you can do to a partner.
She vented in front of us when we ate out with a group of a few people from the office. A few days later, she broke up with her boyfriend. I tried to comfort her. She was friendly before, but since then, we've become even closer. She would ask me out for a drink after work. 2 months later, after her rather aggressive approach, we started dating. We were still an item 6 months later. But lately, I've been busy with work and haven't had a chance to see her very often. One day, Pauline's colleague asked me,
Is Pauline doing all right lately? She's been taking days off frequently and she's not in today. Do you know something about it?
No, I don't know anything about it.
She calls in sick a lot lately.
Are you serious? I didn't have a clue. I wondered if she didn't tell me anything because she was worried about me being busy with work. I called her right away and she said,
I need to talk to you. Can you come over tonight?
I agreed, of course, and bought some food for her that looked easy on the stomach. When I got to her apartment, she was crying. I said, Hey, what's the matter?
I'm pregnant.
What? I was stunned for a moment, but gradually that felt like a good thing. I was going to propose to her anyway, and I wanted children. That's great! We're going to have a child! I hugged her tenderly, and she seemed overwhelmed and cried some more.
I wasn't sure if this was good news for you.
Of course it's good! I can't believe I'm becoming a father! While I was happy, I felt confused a little. I always used protection and was always careful. Actually, I wanted a child sometime after we got married. Well, I guess there's no 100% guaranteed method of protection. But the idea of becoming a father overwhelmed me. What will he or she look like? What's fatherhood going to be like? Pauline and I talked and planned a few things. First, I bought her an engagement ring. She said,
I really want this.
So I bought what she wanted, even though it was a little over my budget for $12,000. I'm glad I could afford what she wanted because I had some savings. Then we went to meet her parents. When they saw the ring, they thought I was rich and treated me very nicely. We went to see my parents, and that went well too. My parents were excited about having their first grandchild. We got married when she was 5 months pregnant. Everybody in the office congratulated us too. Then she took maternity leave. Our married life started out very well. They didn't push as much work on me as they used to, so I could leave the office on time. Pauline gave birth to a baby boy. I thought about the name of the baby for a long time, and so did my parents, but she had decided on the name herself and actually insisted.
It has to be Caden.
Why? Is that after somebody in your family? But she didn't give me a clear reason.
I just like the name. I have a good feeling about it.
I wasn't very convinced, but she's the mother who gave birth. I decided to respect her wish. I had paternity leave too for the first month, and we took care of our baby together. It was hard and quite an experience for me, but watching over our baby, my baby, got me through. I returned to work as my paternity leave period ended. I couldn't help her as much as before, and Pauline was in a bad mood all the time. She didn't even say hi when I got home. She would just push the baby to me and stay in the bedroom alone. I thought she must have been tired of childcare, or it could be postpartum stress. I tried to be understanding. When I told my boss about this, he kindly sent me home earlier than usual. Not expecting me home so early, she was talking on the phone in the bedroom and didn't hear me coming in. She was in a good mood. I heard the baby crying in the background, but she kept talking on the phone.
When can you come over next? Not just me, but the baby must want to see you too.
I've never heard her talking in such a sweet tone. Something stopped me from entering the room. She must have noticed me standing at the door and hung up the phone immediately. Who were you talking to?
Huh? Oh, it's just somebody from the office.
But apparently she was upset. We haven't had any visitors for a while, including our parents and friends, not just people from the company. I was thinking about what she said on the phone while taking care of the baby as usual. She said she didn't feel well and closed the bedroom door. I began to have doubts about whether the baby was my real child. I bought a pet camera with video recording function. I installed it in the living room and bedroom. Now I can monitor the house in real time. Just a few days later, I caught Pauline having an affair in my own house. The baby was lying on the floor unattended. They were too busy with themselves. I felt nauseated. I started recording and stored the evidence of her cheating. I consulted a lawyer who recommended a DNA test. He asked me if I had any idea who her lover was, and I decided to ask one of my colleagues. I invited him out for a drink and asked him to keep the subject between us. I told him about the situation and showed the screenshot of my wife's lover. He quickly recognized who it was. It's Pauline's ex-boyfriend, Caden! His word crushed my world. The name is my son's name, Caden, which she insisted on naming him. The name is with only one letter difference from my son's, Caden. My colleague was shocked when he heard this. From then on, I stopped taking care of the baby when I was busy with work. Pauline kept complaining about it.
Now you're home, it's your turn to take care of the baby.
One day she yelled at me, so I said, I'm filing for divorce.
What?
She was dumbfounded. You'll hear from my lawyer. I'm out of here.
You're joking, right? Do you think you can abandon your child just because I said firmly bringing up divorce? Are you nuts? You're so irresponsible.
She kept yelling at me, but I just ignored her and left. The following day, she received the legal documents along with evidence of her affair from my lawyer, and she wanted to meet with me. I agreed to meet her at the lawyer's office. When she showed up with her lawyer, he didn't waste a minute and said, Your wife agrees to the divorce, but she has suffered mentally from your harassment and your abandonment of childcare, so she demands compensation. She looked as if she had already won. Now it was my lawyer's turn. The reason for the divorce is the wife's infidelity. I also added, I helped a great deal with childcare, and I've never done any kind of harassment. We're here to discuss taking a sample for a DNA test. She planned and gave birth to a baby whose father was her lover. Her lawyer was astonished. I had no previous knowledge about that. It seems that there's a trust issue between my client and I. I'll withdraw from this case. And he left.
Withdrawing? What am I supposed to do now? Are you really a lawyer? What a crook!
She cried out in despair and refused to talk with us further. But we had enough evidence, and now she appealed to emotions.
I believed you would raise a child with me, even though it wasn't your biological child. I did it because I trusted you.
Trusted me? You betrayed me! I pushed her away. Later, the DNA test revealed that the child wasn't mine, and I filed for a divorce. Compensation was for the refund of the ring and other matters, and totaled nearly $38,000. For her lover, I demanded $25,000. After going through parent-child relationship non-existence mediation, I became a stranger to the baby legally. Her lover, Caden, who didn't have the intention of having children in the first place, changed his job and disappeared from her. Pauline never returned to work after her maternity leave. The scandal of her adultery and baby spread throughout the company. I couldn't see that she had any other choice given the circumstances. Now she has to take full responsibility for her own baby.
My name is Kelly Smith. I live at home with my parents, and I'm 27 years old. I work at a major company in the telecommunications industry. Work was my life, and it was my main focus as I worked extra hard at my job. I was earning a pretty decent salary because of that, and so every year I was looking forward to taking a long break and going on vacations overseas. Every year for the New Year holiday, it had become a family tradition to go to Hawaii. But this year, both of my parents would be turning 60 years old, which was a big celebration. So I was thinking we should splurge on a luxury cruise tour, and I was right in the middle of planning that. I didn't want to tell my parents until right before because I wanted to surprise them, so I was moving the plans and preparations along by myself. I knew how hard my parents had worked up until now to build our family and how much they had struggled. That's why I wanted them to be able to enjoy the rest of their lives doing a lot of fun things. The reason why my parents had struggled so much was actually because of my little sister Jessica, who's 2 years younger than me. Ever since she was a child, my sister had a free-spirited personality, to put it nicely. She would act without thinking about the trouble that it would cause to those around her, and she had caused many problems throughout her life. Back when she was a student, she was never able to follow the school rules, and my parents had to go to the school multiple times to apologize to the principal and other parents. Even after she graduated and she became a working adult, she wasn't able to keep any job for a long period of time. It was given for her to mooch off of my parents, even though they weren't making that much money either. And then, right around the time that she had just turned 20 years old, the most unimaginable incident occurred that would be etched into our family history. At that time, I had just started a new job and I was pretty tired every day. On that day, it was my day off of work, and I was relaxing at home, but then, suddenly out of nowhere, the doorbell rang. When my mom went to go answer the front door, she was taking her back to find that there was a woman standing furious, so angry that she looks like the devil. And then the woman said, "Hey, that girl named Jessica, this is her house, isn't it? How dare she lay her hands on my husband? Who does she think she is? If you're here, Jessica, you better come out right now." The woman was screaming, and then she was storming into our house. And then she laid eyes on me and locked on, saying, "It's you! You must be Jessica!" And as she continued screaming, she lunged and grabbed me. I desperately tried to fight her off and say, "No, Jessica's my little sister. I'm not Jessica. I swear, please." But the woman was in such a fit that she couldn't hear me and continued being physically aggressive with me. The woman slapped me with all of her strength across my face, and my mother called the police. The police soon arrived and they arrested the woman. As a result of their investigation, it was discovered that the woman was in fact the wife to the man my sister was having an affair with. After that, my little sister was sued for a settlement fee for the affair. Little did we know that she borrowed money from the black market to pay off that settlement fee. Soon after that, she disappeared, and every single day the debt collectors would come pounding on our door to collect the debt. By that time, her debt had increased to $50,000, but Jessica was nowhere to be found. So they had to pay it off with the money they had saved up for their retirement, and that was how our family somehow got away from being chased by the debt collectors every day. However, because of my little sister, their entire savings were gone, and I could tell that both of my parents were deeply upset by this. But after that incident, my little sister never came back, and our life returned to normal and things were peaceful in the house. My parents had regained their energy, and we were able to welcome their 60th birthdays happily at home. During that time, I had contemplated the reservations for the luxury cruise, and I was moving the plan along until one day. On that day, my parents happened to be out, so I was home alone, and I was cleaning the house, when suddenly I heard the front door swing open. I was shocked and turned around immediately, and to my disbelief, my little sister was there standing in the living room. "Oh, Kelly, long time no see." She said that as she was laughing nonchalantly, but without thinking, I felt the anger rise up and I yelled, "Who do you think you are coming around here after all this time?" But without missing a beat, my sister replied, "Oh, please, this is also my house, so I should be free to come back whenever I want, right? It's the family home, after all." And she sat right down on the sofa, and then she saw the pamphlets for the luxury cruise that were sitting on the coffee table and she grabbed them. "What is this? Oh, wow, this looks amazing. When are you going?" She started asking me multiple questions, so I told her the dates, but informed her that I was taking my parents and that it was just going to be the three of us, so it was none of her business, and I bluntly blew her off. But then she started to throw a tantrum and said, "Seriously? You're just going to leave me out of the family like that? How could you?" So I replied, "Do you have any idea what you've done to our parents? The next time you show your face at this house, I am going to collect $50,000 from you. And if you don't want to pay that, then don't come back here ever again." I was furious, but Jessica started laughing and said, "Oh gosh, how scary. Well then, next time I come back here, I'll make sure to do it when you're not home." And she finally dragged her feet out of the house. I quickly picked up the phone and contacted some of my sister's friends to try to gather information about what happened. As it turns out, she had been hopping from house to house of men outside the state, but Jessica eventually ran into trouble with a man who had a wife and kids, and that's why she had come running back to her hometown to escape. I didn't want there to be another repeat of the past, so I decided to tell my parents about that incident, and we all put up our guard and were extra careful moving forward. And then 2 months passed by after that. My little sister never ended up showing up again, and we were able to maintain our peaceful lives. And finally, we were able to get to the day of the family trip to celebrate my parents' 60th anniversary. Just as we had planned, the three of us departed home for our vacation. When we arrived at the destination, I received a phone call. It was my little sister. I answered the phone and immediately Jessica started talking. "Oh, that luxury cruise that you reserved is the best. It's amazing. Thanks for paying for it." She was laughing and I was shocked. So then I simply said, "What are you talking about? I made a reservation for a hot springs resort." What had actually happened was that when I spoke to my parents about the luxury cruise tour, they were grateful, but they said that they would prefer to go to a quiet hot springs resort and enjoy quality family time together without worrying about those around them. So I had changed our plans and the reservation to a hot springs resort for 3 days and 2 nights. As for the luxury cruise tour, I had made the reservation in case, but I hadn't made any payments yet. That meant that the reservation wasn't fully confirmed, and I was able to cancel it. Because of that, I struggled to understand what exactly my little sister was saying to me. "Huh? A bus tour? What are you talking about? When I told them your name at the port, they said that there was a reservation, so I was able to get on board." That's what my little sister was saying, so I started to have a bad feeling. I hung up the phone, and when I made an inquiry at the tour company, just as I had expected, someone with the same name and gender had also made a reservation. That's why my sister was able to luckily get on board the cruise. But because I had contacted the travel agency and reported this, it was discovered that someone without a reservation had gotten on board the cruise ship. The staff on board found my sister, and she was caught. Because the ship had already left the port, there was no way to turn back, and so my sister was left with no choice but to pay the full fee of the luxury cruise tour herself. But this was none of our business, and we didn't need to worry about that anymore, so we decided to forget about my little sister and fully enjoy our family vacation at the hot springs. 1 month later, the fun New Year's holiday was over, and my life had completely gone back to the usual daily life. I had my hands full with work, and every day I was busy, but happy with my life. But then one day at night, when I was relaxing at home, I heard somebody banging on the front door. I was scared as I walked over and mustered up the courage to say something. "Who is it?" I asked, but then I heard, "It's me, Jessica. Please, open the door." I could hear my sister's voice, and she sounded weak. I decided to open the door. Standing there was my little sister, in ragged clothing and completely frail. According to what she told us, when she was on the luxury cruise tour and got off at an international destination, she started enjoying herself without having any money, and she was arrested by the local police. Because of that, she wasn't able to get back on the boat, and she was instead left in the hands of the local international police. Even though she was finally able to be let go, she didn't have any money to get back, so she had to work a suspicious under-the-table job there, and she was finally able to manage a ticket back home. As soon as she got back into the country, the tour company found her and contacted her. They told her she needed to pay for the luxury cruise fees, but she didn't have a single penny to her name, and she was left with no choice but to borrow money from the black market once again. She was chased after by the debt collectors every single day, and she came back to the family house because she wanted my parents to take care of it for her again somehow. This time, my parents had no sympathy, and they said,
"We don't have a single penny to pay for you anymore. Now hurry up and get out."
As they said it, they forced her outside, and as soon as they slammed the door shut, they locked it. For a while after that, I could hear my little sister outside the door begging, "Please help me." But of course, my parents and I ignored her. As a result of that, my little sister tried to run away again, but this time she was finally caught by the debt collectors, and they took her away on the spot. Thanks to that, we were no longer in danger or trouble anymore. Apparently, Jessica was forcibly sent overseas and was once again stuck having to work a suspicious job. Just once, I was curious about what happened to her after that, and I tried calling her, but my sister's cell phone had already been disconnected, and I wasn't able to get in touch with her. According to some rumors that I heard, Jessica was left with no choice but to live overseas, and they said that she's living an even more difficult life than she was in this country. Apparently, she had used a pretty evil black market lender, so no matter how much she tried to pay back all of her debt, it would only increase. I can imagine she's going to be stuck paying that back for the rest of her life. But even still, she did this all to herself, and so of course there's nobody that's going to lend a hand to her, especially not myself or my parents. And just like that, my parents and I became estranged from my little sister. After that, after we were freed from Jessica, we were able to regain a peaceful life as a family. This time it became a tradition for us to go on a family trip to the hot springs every New Year's holiday, and my parents are looking forward to it every year as well. Now that my little sister was gone, we had become a family of 3, and from now on I knew that I needed to support my parents more than ever, so I decided to put even more effort into my job. As a result of that, I managed to get a promotion at my company, and my salary was increased again. I want to save up money now so that when my parents retire and live off Social Security, that we won't have to worry about our livelihood. After all the struggles that they went through because of my little sister, I didn't want them to have to struggle because of money ever again. Because of those deep feelings, maybe that was connected to my motivation towards my work. I can only pray for our happiness from now on as a family of 3. My name is Lily. I'm an office worker living with my husband, Brian. After I lost both of my parents in an accident 3 years ago, Brian became the only family I had left. We've been married for 2 years now, but lately, things haven't been going well between us. When we were dating, we rarely fought, things were peaceful, but over the past few months, we've been arguing constantly, and it all started when Brian's older brother got divorced. His brother had been living with their parents along with his wife, but about 6 months ago, his wife packed up and left. The reason? She was completely worn out from being treated like a maid by Brian's parents. They never lifted a finger, but they just bark orders while she did everything around the house. Eventually, she hit her limit and walked out. Brian's brother was furious, blaming their parents for the breakup, and followed his wife out the door. That left just his parents in the house. With no one around to cater to their every need, the house quickly turned into a disaster. Junk piled up and the place started to look like a dump. When the neighbors started complaining, guess who they called for help? Me. Brian's parents demanded that I come over and clean. The place was a total wreck, but I spent every weekend for a month scrubbing and organizing until it finally looked livable again. I thought I was done. I thought I'd get my weekends back. But instead, they got used to it. Now they were calling me every week, expecting me to come clean, run errands, and cook, while they lounged around watching TV or napping in the living room. I finally understood why my sister-in-law left, so I talked to Brian about it. I told him I was being treated like a servant and I needed his support, but what I got instead shocked me. He said,
"They're your family too now. What's wrong with helping out your parents? Be a little grateful and show some respect."
I couldn't believe it. I said, "Can't you at least ask them to do the things they can do themselves? I'm exhausted. I never get a proper day off anymore." And then he snapped.
If you can't even take care of the only family you have left, I seriously question your personality. If helping my parents is too much for you, maybe we should just get divorced. You can go live your lonely life since you've got no one else anyway.
He stormed out of the room, leaving me stunned and heartbroken. I knew I had no other family, and yet he used that against me to guilt me into submission. I was deeply disappointed in him. Still, I wasn't ready to throw away our marriage just yet, so I decided to endure it for now. But the more I gave in, the worse things got. His parents piled more and more on me, treating me like their personal maid, just like they had treated his brother's wife. One evening after work, I got a call from my in-laws saying it was urgent and that I needed to come over right away. Worried, I rushed over. It takes me an hour to get there by car, only to find them sitting in a pitch-dark room, eating dinner by the light of their phones. When I asked what was going on, my mother-in-law said, "The breaker tripped. Fix it." Stunned, I blurted out, "Wait, that's what you called me for?" She snapped. "What do you mean, that's it? We can't reach it, it's too high. It's dangerous to climb on a chair at our age. Your brother-in-law's ex-wife did it for us without complaining." Reluctantly, I climbed up and flipped the breaker. The lights came back on and my father-in-law casually said,
Oh, good. It's bright again. You can go home now.
That was it. After an exhausting day at work and an hour-long drive, I was called out just to do something this trivial. My patience finally snapped. I told them firmly, "Please don't call me for things like this again." That's when my mother-in-law pulled something out, a divorce paper, and waved it in front of me. "If you're going to have that kind of attitude, we don't need a daughter-in-law like you. Plus, my son is ready to divorce you at any time." Honestly, I was shocked. I had no idea my husband had been talking to them about divorce behind my back. I planned to confront him as soon as I got home, but before I could even say a word, he confronted me.
I heard what you said to my parents. You gave them attitude?
I told him everything, how exhausted I was, how unreasonable his parents were being. But instead of understanding, he said,
My parents are going through a tough time since my brother moved out. Just help them out.
I snapped back. "If it's so important to you, then you help them." Then he pulled out the same divorce paper I had seen earlier, already filled out, and said,
One more word of back talk to me or my parents and I will file this. Consider this your final warning.
I looked him in the eyes and quietly said, "That's fine." Then I took the papers. That night, something inside me shifted. I'd had enough of him, of his mother, of everything. So I started moving things little by little into the condo my parents had left me when they passed. I had never told my husband about it. It was my only inheritance, and I'd always kept it a secret. In a safe place, just in case I ever needed it. At one point, I had considered moving in there with him, but now I was glad I never mentioned it. Over the next month, I secretly prepared to leave. I kept playing the obedient wife in front of my husband and his parents so they wouldn't suspect a thing. I knew that as long as they saw me as useful, they wouldn't actually want me gone. The divorce threats were just a way to control me. Then one day, while my husband was at work, I called a moving company and had everything packed and sent to my condo. I took the signed divorce papers my husband had given me and went straight to the city office to file them. Afterward, I called my husband and in-laws and said, "Let's meet for dinner tonight. There's a great old sushi place near your house. My treat." When the scheduled time came, my in-laws arrived at the sushi restaurant looking unusually enthusiastic. Not long after, my husband showed up straight from work. It was the perfect setup to carry out my final plan. I glanced over at the sushi chef, who was quietly preparing orders behind the counter. Then, loud enough for everyone to hear, I said, "So, you were serious every time you said you'd divorce me the moment I talked back?" The chef's hands froze for a second. I saw him glance in our direction. I continued, "Honestly, I'm done being treated like a maid, threatened with divorce anytime I speak up. I'm tired of it." My mother-in-law gasped. "Hey, what are you doing saying something like that here of all places?" My husband, clearly embarrassed, jumped in.
You're unbelievable! Talking like that to the only family you have? Apologize right now!
I looked him dead in the eye and said, "They are not my family. Not anymore." Then I calmly told him that I had already submitted the divorce papers. He went pale.
You're kidding, right? You did what? You can't just do that! Cancel it, now!
I shook my head and said, "Not happening. You filled it out and stamped it yourself, remember?" My mother-in-law snapped.
You have nowhere to go and no one else. If you go through with this, you're the one who's going to suffer.
I smiled and replied, "Actually, I'm just fine. Living with people like you, lazy and completely out of touch with reality, that's what's stressful." Right then, the sushi we had ordered arrived. The chef set a beautifully arranged platter in front of me and said with a warm smile,
You've been through a lot. Time to be happy now. I'm rooting for you.
He had made me a special deluxe set on the house. While my in-laws fumbled through awkward excuses and tried to save face in front of the well-known local sushi chef, I calmly enjoyed my sushi, thanked the chef, and walked out of the restaurant. Finally, I am free. After I kept ignoring my ex-husband's calls, he finally gave up about 2 weeks later and went quiet. But not long after that, I got a call at work. It was him again. He said his mother had collapsed at home and was now partially paralyzed. Then he added, "Taking care of her is too much for us. Please come back." I immediately replied, "No," and hung up. With just the two of them, my ex and his father left to care for her. Things quickly spiraled. My ex started taking time off work so frequently that he eventually got fired. They had to give up their apartment and move back into the family home. To make things worse, the sushi chef from that dinner apparently shared what had happened, and soon, rumors about how the in-laws had treated me started spreading around the neighborhood. Now the three of them are living together under one roof, ashamed and socially isolated. As for me, I'm enjoying a quiet and peaceful single life back at my childhood home, surrounded by memories of my parents and finally free from stress. If I ever decide to get married again, I've promised myself one thing. Next time, I'll make very sure I know what kind of in-laws I'm marrying into.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.